All right, thank you for joining us. This is Group 1, Meeting 5 for CIT 261, and today is October 21st. Here's our group members. All right, today we're going to have a lesson by Casey, myself, and Catherine, and then Chris with CSS3 transitions and animations. So what are they? Transitions. Well, it's the ability to change values of properties in a smooth fashion over specified time. Changing the width of an object over the course of, let's say, 5 seconds. So there's a couple of different things that we need to specify when we create a transition effect. First, we need to specify the property that we want to add the effect to. We need to add the time duration of the effect. So here's an example. So here we have the transition effect. We are going to affect the width, and the duration is going to be seconds. So this is CSS style is just going to affect the div with the class example here. So this is our kind of our normal standard, and we have our width and our time, the property, and then our time specification. Here's an example that I did. We are going to be using this div in the HTML. It's class as example. The last example here. Now, when we click this, it will, well, it'll automatically start growing from a width of 500 pixels over the course of 5 seconds. So let's see what that looks like. So this is a hover event. Amazing. So when you stop hovering, it goes back to the 20 pixels. Okay. So how do we trigger the transition with JavaScript? Well, the trigger to add the CSS class to the desired with the desired behavior to the object, and to stop the effect, we'll remove the class from the class list. And then if we want to have an extra, add another CSS class with the desired behavior in our JavaScript code. You see I have a couple different functions that I'm going to be calling. My drink me button here will be calling the enlarge box. And here I'm using get element by class name, but this can be ID as well. I'm just branching out there. So I'm going to add to the class list for this object large class. So that's going to be width 800, height 100. Okay. Natively, the trigger class is what it already has, and here's our transition. 10 seconds for our width to change, and our 5 seconds for our height. There. When I'm done with adding it, I'm going to remove the trigger small, and this will allow me to continue the behavior. So if I click drink me, it'll get big. If I press me, it'll get small, and I could hit drink me again because I've removed the last trigger small. Otherwise, they conflict with each other. Here I have the small box. It's the same thing. We're adding the trigger small, the trigger enlarge there, so we get small again. So let's take a look, see what this looks like. And in case you're wondering, yes, that is an Alice in Wonderland reference. Okay, so some things to remember with their transitions. You must specify duration. Without it, it will default to 0, and so nothing will happen. You're going to want to use WebKits for older browsers if you want to the transitions to function on these older versions of the browsers. The modern day ones will work fine with just our transition statement. Okay. Now we're going to something very closely related, is animations with CSS. They allow the changing of one style to another. The CSS properties as often as needed. There's a couple of different things that we need to specify. We need to specify the animation name. So this is the name of the keyframe to create the animation. And we'll look at a keyframe in a couple seconds. The animation duration, the amount of time complete the animation, defaults at 0. And the animation iteration count, this one's optional. If you don't have it, it will just run once. You can have a certain number, or you can put in infinite and it will loop forever. Okay, so here we have the at keyframe. This contains the style of the element at the specified times. So here in my animation CSS class, I'm going to call the animation name color change. It's going to take 30 seconds, and this is going to loop indefinitely. So I'll put infinite there. So my keyframe here is color change, and we state from, so we're starting from the background color of blue, and we're going to background color of red, and it's going to take 30 seconds to transition from that. When it is complete, it will go back to the original color of the background, which is blue. We could also code the keyframe events by %. So in this case here, color change at between 0 and 25%, we're going from a blue to a red, then we're going to a red to a green, and then a green to yellow, and then yellow back to its original color by 100%. Here's a quick example of where we're animating, and we're using the coded percentages here in the last example. Go transition through several colors and then all the way back, and it's going to loop over and over, and it's going to take 5 seconds in this case. Fancy. All right, and it stopped just because this is a video. Notice that we're calling this div has a class animation too, and that's what we're affecting there. Okay, so how do we trigger the animation with JavaScript? So here's an example of the HTML. Coded some 2 buttons real fast. One to start the animation, one to stop it. Here we have our default CSS class. And then here's our keyframe here. So we're going to use percentages again. But this time, instead of just doing one thing, we're actually going to move our object and change its color. Okay. And here's the function to toggle the animation here. Here I'm using the get element by ID, class list, add, and the animation. So do animation 4. It's going to call color change 4. Here's the keyframe color change form. So this is what it's going to run. A stop animation, which is animation 5. So we'll remove that just so we don't have anything conflicting with each other. Let's take a look at what this looks like. Okay. Okay, any questions for me?
Nope.
No, but that's really cool.
All right, Catherine, I think you are up next.
Okay. Okay, let's get this set up. Okay, can you see my slideshow now? Presentation?
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. So, so you guys know I'm doing DOM manipulation, and just a reminder is DOM stands for Document Object Model. So basically, it's a JavaScript way to access everything in the HTML by putting it, or by basically using it as an object. And so everything in the HTML is pretty much static, but we can use JavaScript to make it more dynamic. And so we can actually create HTML elements with JavaScript. So I'm kind of use this train example as an example where the engine and the carts are all representative of HTML elements. And so if I wanted to make my train longer, I would have to obviously add another cart. But before I can add the cart, I first have to create it. So created a cart. And later on, I'll show you guys some of the syntax for this. So the next step would be how to insert that element into the DOM. And so JavaScript actually has several methods for doing this. One is append child, which basically every element nested inside another element is considered a child, and the elements, I guess that's overarching, is the parent. And so you can access a list or an array of all of the child nodes. And appending it would just attach it onto the end of all of the current child nodes. And then there's also insert before, which basically just looks at all of the child elements. And you can access a specific child element. Say I want to insert my new element between my header 1 and my first paragraph. I would access the child node of index 1 and insert the element there. And again, I'll show you some syntax here in a minute. And then I can also remove elements. Say I didn't want to have a paragraph anymore, I can actually remove it from the DOM entirely using that function. And again, I'd access it with the child index. So here's some syntax of creating an element. Say I wanted to create a button. I do document.createElement, and then inside of the quotes, I can put what type of element I want to create. And I believe it works uppercase or lowercase, but most examples I've seen use uppercase. And then append child, it use document. You can get element by ID or whatever access you want to use to get a hold of the parent object. And then use .append child and put in the new object that you created in the parameters. And pretty much the same with insert before. You just have to first, in the insert before parameters, you put your object that you created, and then you have to put the index of where you want to put it, accessing the parent node, .child nodes, and then the index where it says n of whatever item you're trying to put it before. And then basically the same with remove child, just access the parent, remove child, and then which element you're trying to remove. So that's all I have for my slideshow. I'll now show you guys kind of some of my, oops, that's not what I wanted. Page is loading. Okay, can you guys see my page now?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically when I click this create icons button, it will add, it'll create a new element, which is an icon, and then it'll append it to a list that I have inside of, or it'll append a child inside of my div that I have. So it's yellow, so it's kind of hard to see, but as I keep clicking it, it keeps adding them to the end of my child elements inside my div. And if I want to remove a child, what I actually have is I'll just remove all the children of the color, I guess we'll do yellow, for example. So I clicked that. It basically, I have it loop through all of my child elements, and if it's yellow, it will remove it. And then if I want to insert before, say I want to insert something before every purple element, I'll hit add icons, and then before each of the purple elements, it added a new icon. And so that's all I have for you guys today. So my code's not too exciting, but does anyone have any questions or anything?
Oh, it looks good.
No.
Okay, I'll pass the ball then.
All right, Chris, switching over to you.
All right, let me get my screen shared. All right, so I have.
You ain't seen yours. Wait.
Is it not showing?
All right, now I can see yours.
All right, do you see my code?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it now.
All right, fantastic. So let me show you what mine looks like really quick before I explain everything. So this is an animated sliding menu. And when you click on the little icon over here, the menu pops out. And then when you click on it, it goes back in. Then I also have a little animation here in the middle of the screen that will transition with the size of your screen to smaller and larger.
Oh, cool.
So it is responsive to the size of the display it is on. And so it's not too hard to create this. You actually just need a couple of things in your HTML. And they're just containers. Got one that's just a regular container that holds my orbiting circle. Then I've got another that is just my menu. And on here, I have a on-click function that is what makes it so it toggles back and forth when you click the icon. And then the rest of them are just a container for what's going to be inside that menu. And all the magic really happens inside the CSS on this. And I've got my fonts listed on here. I've got the primary colors listed on here. And I reference those in my code with the primary, secondary, and tertiary. That way I don't have to keep on looking up what these different color codes are. And it makes it a lot easier to actually go through and make everything. It's all about continuity, basically. So the sliding menu, I just have it displayed in block. I put a little bit of a padding on it so it's not all the way to one side or the other. And then you end up going through and making a couple of different menus. And you have one for before it happens and one for after it happens. And it just basically changes the size of that box and the position of that box. So it moves it on and off screen and makes it bigger and smaller based on the toggle when you click it. And then the let me get to it. For the animation, I used orbiting circle. And for my heights and everything and my width, I wanted to make it 25% of the screen at all times. And so instead of assigning it a pixel, I just assigned it a percentage, and it will always maintain 25% of the screen, no matter how big or small the screen is. And then I made it the orbiting circle by making the border radius of that circle 50%. And if you change that, you can actually make it different shapes, adding different border radiuses and whatnot to other stuff, which kind of gives it a cool effect. And I can show you that later. And so with this one, I had it go through, and this is my keyframes, and I told it the style is going to be, it's going to orbit, so it's always going to stay on the outer perimeter of the container that it's in. And I have it going through, and it will wait for 5 seconds, or 5% of the time that it's going in each of the corners. It'll just stop and pause there. And it just, as we go down, it just changes the position. Oops. Each time it goes through, and it just transforms that. And that's how you make that animation going through. And as far as the JavaScript goes, it's just a simple toggle on here. I have it getting the getting the element by its ID, and then I have it updating that element by its class, and it's on when it when you click that toggle, which is the icon for the navigation. And then it just, every single time, it'll just go through, and if it's toggled open, or the transition is in one position, whenever you toggle it, it'll automatically flip it to the opposite. And so it's, when you use a toggle, it cuts down on the amount of code and repetition you have to have, especially if you have a lot of different animations or transitions or transforms in your web page that you're making, and you don't want to have to constantly go through and get those elements and retype those elements. It gives you, the toggle gives you less places where you're going to end up breaking your code. And so to see that fully working here, we'll go just jump through here really quick. Oops, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong page too. There we go. And this is what it looks like full size. 25% of the screen right here is your menu. And then everything flexes and shifts as you move your browser and resize it. Any questions?
Nope.
I have no questions. That is awesome.
Great work.
All right. Thanks.
Can you see my screen at all?
No.
This is the end of the meeting. Next meeting will be Saturday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and we'll have Catherine and Ryan slated to teach. All right. Well, that is the end of our meeting. You guys have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.